Emma sat at her kitchen table, the morning sun filtering softly through the curtains. She stared at the newspaper in front of her, her fingers tracing the edges of the wedding announcement. It was printed right there in the local paper. Her name, her fiancé's name, the date of their wedding, and a picture of her in a simple white dress. The moment was supposed to feel joyful, final. But instead, a quiet unease settled deep in her chest. She had dreamed of this day for years, a fresh start, a chance to leave behind the loneliness and regrets that had shaped so much of her life. At 58, she was finally ready to embrace happiness again. But the past had a way of creeping back in when she least expected it. Emma folded the paper carefully and placed it next to the old photo album on the table. Memories flickered through her mind, days filled with laughter, and nights clouded by silence. She wondered if the people around her truly understood the journey she had taken to get here. To most, she was just a woman about to marry a kind man, starting a new chapter. But inside, she carried stories no one knew. Her phone buzzed softly, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from her fiancé, David. "Thinking of you. Can't wait to see you tonight." She smiled, the warmth in his words momentarily chasing away the shadows. Yet, even David couldn't erase the feeling that something was about to change. Later that day, Emma decided to visit the small cafe where she had met David for the first time. The familiar scent of coffee and old wood soothed her, but the quiet hum of conversations only made her more aware of the silence she felt inside. She took a deep breath and pulled out the newspaper again, staring at her wedding announcement one more time. What she didn't know was that somewhere across town, James was reading the same newspaper with very different feelings. His hand trembled slightly as he held the page, his eyes locked on Emma's face. He hadn't seen her in over 20 years, yet the sight of her wedding announcement stirred something long buried, a secret, a regret, a connection that refused to fade. James folded the paper slowly, his mind racing back to a time when things had been different. They were young, hopeful, and full of promises neither had kept. That photo he kept in his wallet, the one where they were smiling side by side, was the only piece of that past he had allowed himself to keep. He debated what to do. The years had made him cautious, but the announcement felt like a call he couldn't ignore. Was it too late to say the words left unsaid? Could he risk reopening old wounds? Or was this his chance to finally find peace? Meanwhile, Emma returned home, unaware of how close the past was creeping back into her life. She prepared dinner slowly, her thoughts tangled between excitement and unease. She thought of David, of their plans, of the future she had almost dared to believe in fully. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. It was unexpected, sharp, and urgent. Emma's heart skipped a beat. When she opened it, standing there was James. He looked older, worn by life, but with the same eyes she remembered. In his hand, he held the faded photo of them together, a silent message that some secrets were never truly forgotten. Emma stared at him, her mind racing, her carefully built world trembling. What did he want? Why had he come now? The wedding announcement, the photo, the years between them, everything was about to unravel, and nothing would ever be the same again, Dres. James stood on the doorstep, the faded photo still clutched in his hand. His voice was steady but quiet when he finally spoke. "Emma, I know this isn't how you expected to see me, but there are things I need to say, things from long ago that you deserve to hear, before you move forward." Emma's breath caught. She hadn't seen James since they were young, back before life's hardships and silence pushed them apart. Now, here he was, standing in front of her, stirring memories she thought were safely locked away. Her eyes searched his face, trying to read the years of pain and regret hidden behind his calm. "Why now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "After all this time?" James looked down at the photo in his hand, the edges worn from years of being folded and unfolded. Because I saw the announcement. I read about your wedding. And I realized there were things I never said, things that changed everything between us. Emma stepped aside, letting him enter. The room felt heavier, as if the air itself was holding its breath. They sat at the kitchen table, the same one Emma had been sitting at just hours before, but now filled with an awkward silence that begged to be broken. I never wanted to hurt you, James began. Back then I was scared. I thought I was protecting you by walking away. But I was wrong. There's a secret I've kept all these years, one that explains why I disappeared, and why I couldn't be there for you. Emma's heart pounded. She wanted to look away, to tell him she didn't care about the past, that she was ready to start fresh. But something in his voice stopped her. She needed to hear it, no matter how painful. James took a deep breath. When we were together, I found out something about my family. Something that changed everything. I was caught in a web of lies and fear. I didn't know how to tell you. I was afraid it would ruin your life. Emma's mind raced. She remembered the nights filled with unanswered questions, the silence that grew between them like a wall. Could this be the reason? Why hadn't he trusted her enough to share the truth? There was someone else, James continued. Someone connected to my past who wanted to keep me away. They threatened my family, and I thought if I left, I could keep you safe. Tears welled in Emma's eyes, but she blinked them back. The weight of his words settled over her. She realized this wasn't just about lost love. It was about fear, sacrifice, and a secret too heavy for either of them to carry alone. I wish I could have told you then, James said softly. But I was a coward. I'm here now because I want to make things right, even if that means changing everything you planned. Emma sat silently, torn between anger and understanding. Her wedding was just days away, and suddenly the future she had imagined felt uncertain. Could she trust him? Could she forgive him? Or was it too late for both? James looked at her with hope, but also with the pain of years lost. I don't expect you to forgive me today. I just want you to know the truth. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. This secret, once hidden, was now a turning point, a choice between the past and the future, between what was lost and what could still be found. As the afternoon sun faded, the room remained quiet except for their breathing. Two people bound by history, facing the impossible question. Can a secret this big be forgiven? And if so, at what cost? James sat quietly across from Emma, the weight of his confession hanging between them like a thick fog. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she folded and unfolded the worn photo he had brought, tracing the young faces they once wore. So much time had passed, yet the pain felt fresh, like a wound never properly healed. She wondered how two people who had once meant so much could now feel like strangers. She finally looked up, her voice soft but steady. Why didn't you ever reach out before? Why keep me in the dark all these years? The question wasn't just about the past. It was about trust, about the walls that had built themselves around her heart. James's eyes held regret. I thought I was protecting you, Emma. But I was wrong. I was scared of what might happen if the truth came out. It wasn't just my family. It was dangerous. People I didn't want you to be involved with. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. I should have told you everything. Emma felt a surge of anger mixed with sorrow. She remembered the nights she spent alone, wondering what had gone wrong. Had she been wrong to hold on to hope? Or was this his chance to finally set things right? I spent years trying to forget, she whispered. I tried to move on, to build a new life. And now backslash, her voice faltered. Now it feels like everything is unraveling. James reached out hesitantly, his hand hovering near hers. I'm not here to undo your life, Emma. I want to help you understand it, to find peace. Maybe it's too late for us, but it's not too late for the truth." Emma looked away, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions. She had a wedding to plan, a future she thought was settled. Yet here was the past, crashing back with all its unanswered questions. The room felt smaller, the silence heavier. Outside, the world continued, unaware of the fragile moment unfolding inside. Emma's thoughts drifted back to the old photo, their younger selves smiling, innocent and unaware of the challenges ahead. Was that really them? Or just a memory dressed in hope? "I need time," she said finally. "Time to think, to understand what this means." Her voice was steady, but her heart was uncertain. James nodded, understanding the gravity of what he had unleashed. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here, ready to answer any questions, no matter how hard." Days passed slowly. Emma found herself walking the familiar streets of her town, the newspaper announcement still fresh in her mind. Conversations with David felt distant, her laughter forced. The secret James brought back had tangled itself into every corner of her life. She found herself returning again and again to that old photo. Who were they really? Two young people caught between love and fear? Or two strangers haunted by choices made long ago? One afternoon, as she sat in her favorite park, an elderly woman approached her bench. "You look like you have a heavy heart," the woman said kindly. Emma nodded, surprised by the stranger's insight. "I once had a secret like yours," the woman continued. "It changed everything for me, but it also taught me something important, that the truth has a way of healing, even when it hurts." Emma listened, the woman's words wrapping around her like a warm blanket. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about forgetting, but about understanding. Maybe the future she feared losing could still hold something new. That evening, Emma sat at her kitchen table again, the photo in her hands and a new determination in her heart. She wasn't ready to forget the past, but she was ready to face it. With courage, with honesty, and maybe, just maybe, with hope. The secret James carried was no longer just his burden. It was theirs to face together, whatever that might mean for the days ahead. The day felt unusually still as Emma prepared for what should have been a quiet afternoon. She arranged fresh flowers in a vase, her hands steady but her mind restless. The secret James had revealed still lingered in the corners of her thoughts, like a shadow she couldn't shake. Just as she placed the last bloom, a sharp knock echoed through the house, breaking the silence. Startled, Emma hesitated before opening the door. Standing there was James, his face lined with worry, but his eyes steady and clear. In his hand, he held the same worn photograph, their younger selves frozen in time. The sight of it made Emma's heart quicken, memories rushing back with an intensity she hadn't expected. James didn't say a word at first. He stepped inside slowly, as if entering a fragile world he wasn't sure he belonged in anymore. Emma watched him carefully, searching for answers in the familiar yet distant expression he wore. This visit was unplanned, sudden, and yet it felt like the inevitable next step in a story neither of them had finished writing. "I needed to see you," James finally said, his voice low but firm. "There's more I have to explain, things I couldn't say before." Emma's breath caught. She wanted to ask why now, why after so many years, but she held back. Instead, she nodded silently and led him to the living room, where they sat across from each other, the photograph resting between them like a fragile bridge connecting past and present. James took a deep breath. "The people I mentioned before, the ones who threatened my family, they weren't just shadows from the past. They're still part of my life. I left because I thought it was the only way to protect you. But now I realize that running away only caused more pain." Emma's eyes widened. The fear in his voice was real, palpable. Suddenly, the distance between them shrank, replaced by a shared burden neither had anticipated. She realized how deeply their lives had been tangled by forces beyond their control. "I never wanted you involved," James continued. "But now that you know, you need to be careful. I'm sorry for dragging you into this." Emma swallowed hard. The safety she had fought so hard to build suddenly felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. Yet beneath the fear, there was a flicker of something else: determination. She wasn't willing to hide or run anymore. "Tell me everything," she said quietly. "I deserve to know the whole truth." James nodded, relief washing over his face. Over the next hour, he unfolded the tangled story, the threats, the lies, and the sacrifices made to keep Emma safe. He spoke of nights spent in silence, of decisions made in fear, and of the love that refused to die despite everything. Emma listened, her emotions shifting with every word. Anger, sadness, hope, they all wove together into a complex tapestry of feelings she struggled to understand. The past was no longer a closed chapter, but an open wound that needed healing. When James finished, the room was heavy with unspoken questions. Emma's mind raced. What would this mean for her wedding? For her future? Could she face the unknown and still hold on to the life she had built with David? James looked at her, eyes searching. "I know this isn't easy. I'm not asking for anything except a chance to be honest with you, to be part of your life in whatever way you want." Emma took a long breath, steadying herself. She realized that the real test wasn't just the secrets or the past, but the courage to face them head-on. Whatever the future held, she wouldn't face it alone. As James left that evening, Emma stood at the door, the photograph clutched tightly in her hand. The quiet house no longer felt empty or still. It felt alive with possibility, fragile, uncertain, but undeniably real. For the first time in a long while, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, some secrets were meant to keep people apart, but to bring them back together. Emma stood by the window, watching the rain softly fall against the glass. The sky was heavy, mirroring the weight pressing on her chest. The secret James had revealed wasn't just a story from the past anymore. It was a storm threatening to undo everything she had carefully built. The wedding was just days away, yet the future felt more uncertain than ever. Her phone buzzed quietly on the table. It was a message from David. "Thinking of you. Hope you're okay." The simple words made her heart ache. How could she explain the storm raging inside her? How could she tell him about James, the secrets, the fear? Emma's thoughts wandered back to the last conversation with James, the way his voice had trembled with regret and hope, the way his eyes had held a silent apology. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this time things could be different. But trust was fragile, and the past had taught her to be cautious. She reached for the faded photo James had brought, the one where they smiled, young and innocent. It felt like a relic from another life, a reminder of who she once was and who she might never be again. Her fingers traced the edges, and a single tear slipped down her cheek. That evening, David noticed the distance in her eyes. Over dinner, his questions came gently but steadily. "Emma, what's going on? You seem far away." She forced a smile, hiding the turmoil inside. How could she share this tangled web of secrets and old love when the future they dreamed together was so close? The next day, Emma found herself walking through the quiet streets of her neighborhood, the photo tucked safely in her purse. She stopped at a small park bench and sat, the cool breeze whispering around her. Memories of happier times with James flooded her mind, mixed with the ache of what had been lost. She wasn't sure what she wanted anymore. Was it forgiveness, closure, or something more, a chance to heal the wounds that had never fully healed? Suddenly, her phone rang. It was James. "Emma, I need to see you. There's something important I didn't tell you. Something you deserve to know before your wedding." His voice was urgent but calm. Emma hesitated but agreed. Meeting him again felt like stepping into a storm she wasn't sure she could weather. But the unanswered questions pushed her forward. When they met, James's expression was serious, shadows of worry deepening his eyes. "There's more to the threats I mentioned, something that involves your safety, too. I couldn't tell you before because I didn't want to scare you, but now I have to be honest." Emma's heart pounded, fear mixed with frustration. How much danger was she really in? And why had James kept this from her? He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old letter, yellowed with age. "This was sent to me years ago, warning me to stay away from you. The people behind it are still watching, and with your wedding coming, I'm worried they might act." Emma's breath caught. The life she had hoped for suddenly felt fragile, threatened by shadows she couldn't see. The secret James carried wasn't just a memory. It was a danger lurking in the background of her new beginning. "I don't know what to do," Emma admitted, her voice trembling. "I want to move forward, but how can I when the past keeps pulling me back?" James looked at her with quiet determination. "You're not alone. We'll face this together, no matter what comes." Days turned into restless nights. Emma's mind raced with fears and hopes tangled together. She found herself standing at a crossroads, between the safety of a planned future and the uncertain truth of the past. On the morning of her wedding rehearsal, Emma looked in the mirror. The woman staring back at her was strong but weary, ready to fight for the life she wanted, but unsure if it was still within reach. As she stepped into the light, she knew one thing for certain. The secret James carried had changed everything, but it hadn't taken away her strength. Whatever happened next, she was ready to face it head-on. Emma stood at the edge of the garden where the wedding ceremony was to take place. The flowers were in full bloom, the air sweet with the scent of roses and lilies, but Emma's heart was a storm of emotions. The secret James had brought back had unsettled everything she thought she knew about her future. The man she loved, the life she planned, all seemed fragile now, like glass waiting to shatter. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed the folds of her dress. David approached quietly, his eyes full of concern and love. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. Emma looked into his eyes, feeling the warmth, but knowing how much she was hiding. "I'm trying," she said, forcing a small smile. The truth felt like a weight pressing on her chest, but David deserved honesty, even if it was hard. As the rehearsal began, Emma's mind drifted back to the conversations with James. The danger, the past, the unspoken feelings that lingered beneath the surface. How could she marry someone without fully knowing what waited in the shadows? And yet, David had been her anchor, steady and kind, offering a future she longed for. After the rehearsal, Emma found herself alone by the fountain, the soft sound of water mingling with the whisper of the wind. She pulled the worn photo from her purse and stared at it, the faces frozen in time, a reminder of a love complicated by secrets and fear. Her phone buzzed. A message from James. "We need to talk. It's urgent." Emma's heart raced. What new secret could there be? She debated ignoring it, but the uncertainty gnawed at her. She agreed to meet him at a quiet cafe nearby. When she arrived, James was already there, his expression serious and eyes filled with urgency. "There's more," he said, without preamble. "The people who threatened us before, they're planning something. Your wedding might be a target." Emma's breath caught. Fear spiraled inside her, but beneath it, a fierce resolve took hold. She refused to let fear dictate her life. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, frustration edging her voice. "I wanted to protect you," James said. "But now I realize hiding the truth put you at risk." Emma looked away, the weight of the situation settling in. This wasn't just about the past anymore, it was about survival, about choosing who she could trust, and how she could protect herself. That night, Emma sat with David, sharing as much as she could without unraveling the delicate threads holding their future together. David listened quietly, his support unwavering. She saw the pain in his eyes, but also his determination to stand by her side. In the days that followed, Emma and James worked together cautiously, uncovering clues about the threats lurking just out of sight. Each discovery was a reminder of how much was at stake, not just for her, but for everyone she loved. The wedding day arrived, bathed in sunlight and filled with smiles from friends and family. Emma's heart was heavy with fear and hope intertwined. She walked down the aisle, each step a declaration of courage and trust in the face of uncertainty. As David took her hand, Emma caught a glimpse of James in the crowd, his eyes full of silent apology and a hope for forgiveness she wasn't sure she could give yet. The ceremony began, vows exchanged with trembling voices and tears. Emma realized that life was messy and unpredictable, but also full of second chances and strength she never knew she had. The secret James brought back had changed everything, but it hadn't destroyed her future. It had made her brave enough to face it. The wedding reception buzzed with laughter and music, but beneath the celebration, Emma's heart remained tangled in uncertainty. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, smiling for the cameras, yet her mind was elsewhere, caught between the life she had just pledged to David and the secret past James had unearthed. She found a quiet corner, the glow of fairy lights casting soft shadows, and her thoughts drifted back to James. He had warned her about the danger, had stepped into her life with a truth she hadn't asked for but couldn't ignore. Now, surrounded by friends and family, she felt the sharp contrast between the world she wanted and the one she lived in. David joined her quietly, his hand warm as he slipped his fingers into hers. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. Emma forced a smile. "I will be. It's just a lot to take in." David nodded, understanding more than she expected. "We'll get through it. Together." As the evening wore on, Emma's phone vibrated in her purse. A message from James. "Meet me. We need to talk before it's too late." Her breath hitched. The celebration suddenly felt fragile, like a glass ready to crack. She stepped away from the crowd and found a secluded spot in the garden. James was already there, his expression grave. "There's no time," he said quietly. "I've found out they're planning something for tonight, something that could put you all in danger." Emma's heart pounded. The past she tried to leave behind had followed her here, threatening to shatter the life she was building. Fear mingled with adrenaline as she took in his words. "We need to act fast," James continued. "I'm going to alert the police, but I need you to stay close to David and be careful." Emma nodded, steeling herself. The night had shifted from celebration to survival, and she was caught in the middle. Back inside, she slipped into her role with quiet determination, watching over David and their guests. Every laugh, every toast, felt like a fragile thread holding the evening together. Suddenly, the lights flickered and then went out, plunging the room into darkness. Gasps and murmurs filled the air. Emma's heart raced as she heard footsteps and a low murmur of voices outside. The emergency lights flickered on, revealing police officers streaming into the venue. James appeared at her side, nodding reassuringly. The threat was real, but the danger was contained. The people from James's past had been stopped before they could strike. As the night calmed and the music slowly resumed, Emma realized something profound. The secret James had carried, the fears and dangers, hadn't just been shadows. They were part of her story now. She looked at David, his hand steady in hers, and at James, standing nearby, with a quiet hope in his eyes. The past and future had collided, but in that collision, something new was born. A chance to face life's uncertainties with courage and honesty. Emma smiled softly, knowing that no matter what came next, she was ready to face it, because the truth, however painful, was never meant to keep people apart. It was meant to bring them back together. The morning sun spilled through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room, where Emma sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. The events of the previous night played over and over in her mind. The darkness, the sudden danger, the rush of police arriving just in time. It was a harsh reminder that some secrets refused to stay buried, no matter how deeply they were hidden. David was still asleep beside her, peaceful and unaware of the turmoil that had almost shattered their day. Emma felt a mix of gratitude and guilt. Gratitude for the safety they now had, guilt for the shadows she had brought into his life without warning. She thought about James, his sudden return, the photo, the warnings, the danger. How strange it was that one man could carry so much of her past and yet be a stranger in the present. She realized that forgiveness would take time, but understanding was already beginning to grow. Her phone buzzed softly. A message from James. "I'm sorry for everything. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here." Emma took a deep breath and replied simply, "Thank you." Later that day, Emma met James one last time in the quiet park where they had once dreamed of a future together. They sat on the bench beneath an ancient oak tree, its leaves whispering in the breeze. The years between them felt like a bridge neither could cross easily. But the moment was peaceful. "I want you to be happy, Emma," James said softly. "Even if that happiness isn't with me." Emma smiled, a bittersweet curve of her lips. "I want that too. For both of us." They talked quietly about the past, about mistakes and missed chances, about how life had shaped them in ways neither expected. The pain was there, but so was a fragile hope for healing. As they parted, Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The secret James had carried for so long was no longer a prison, but a path to freedom. She had chosen her future, with David, with honesty, with courage. Back at home, Emma and David sat hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. The past would always be part of their story, but it wouldn't define them. Emma looked out the window, the sunlight bright and promising. The future was uncertain, yes, but it was hers to write. And this time, she was ready to guess.